Greetings everyone, Lokanar here. It's been about just over 2 weeks or so since I put up that announcement for the Q&A video. So I finally have enough time to actually sit down and record this, hopefully in one long succession. I hope to avoid having to break this up here. Just reading over some of the questions and having to order them. I've tried to put them in some semblance of order, but I've just had hell with it. So I'm just going to go probably from the first couple of questions all the way up to the newer ones for it, and we'll see where this goes. Let's see here. Now, for just a warning for everyone, this could contain massive spoilers. You've been warned for it. I don't feel like hearing anybody bitch about it, and I really don't give a shit even if you do. So there could be massive spoilers to any of the Gundam franchises or Mega Man or shows in general. Just beware. I don't plan on saying anything along the lines of spoiler alert or anything like that, whether it's before or after I actually say it, because I don't give a shit. You've been warned. Anyways, let's start off with a couple of questions here. We're going to go here. Planet Side Lover. Let's see here. Your first question. Where do I usually find these games that I play? Do I buy them when they first came out, or did I find them in bargain bins? And are there any Gundam games on a system other than the PlayStation? Alright, well that's a fairly multi-part, straightforward question. I usually find these games in a bargain bin type of thing. I do own all of these games in their physical form that I've played so far. Let's see here. With Gundam versus, or Federation versus Zeon, I remember renting that when it first came out years ago, when the Gundam craze first really started to hit, after Gundam Wing had finally come along to the United States with Toonami. And I played the shit out of it. I used to rent that damn thing almost every weekend and play it. And then I kind of fell out of touch with playing it, and I found it in a local GameStop bargain bin for like $10, and it was unopened, brand new. So of course I'd buy it. And then games like Federation vs. Zeon, and then there was Encounters in Space, another game which I used to rent a lot, and I found in a used bargain bin for that one. Now the one that I got the luckiest on had to have been Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam. I had never seen an actual copy being sold in a store when it first came out, or used or anything like that. I knew you can get them online, but I never found any of them physically. Until one day I happened to be at a local mall, and they had a GameStop there, and I happened to go in, and I'm looking through some of their PlayStation 2 games and their used games, and sure enough, I see the white spine, which on that game case itself, it has a white spine with just black lettering, and it was brand new. Never been opened, brand new Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam, and I snapped that shit up as soon as I could. I had only originally played that game as a demo back for the PlayStation magazine when I used to do the PlayStation 2 demos, and there was a short arcade demo for Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam where you would play like 2-3 stages with only a handful of selectable mobile suits, and I loved it. I wanted to play it, but I could never find it where I lived at the time. So to answer that question, yes, I do find them both brand new and in bargain bins. And I've bought maybe a couple of them online, and there's going to be a couple more for it, but I'm usually on like a budget like every other gamer. Towards the degree, are there any other Gundam games on other systems besides PlayStation? Yes. There are, as far as I know, Gundam games even starting up from the Super Nintendo. Hell, there might even been some for the Nintendo Entertainment System. But the Super Nintendo are the first couple ones that I can remember. And towards that, I think the two that come to mind for me the most are there was Gundam Wing Endless Waltz, or Endless Duel, I think it's actually called, which is just like a fighting game for the Super Nintendo set in the Gundam Wing universe. And then there was, I think, a similar one, which is with G Gundam. It was just the G Fighter kind of Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter type moves with the Gundams and such like that. All the way up to the PlayStation, which I didn't really have much to do with towards Gundam games because they weren't really brought over to the United States. You had to really get a Japanese PlayStation and, well, learn to speak kanji or just guess and chew on your controller until you did some button combination correctly. The first real time they were brought back over to the United States definitely had started during the PlayStation 2 era. And that would be with Gundam, or the Mobile Suit Gundam Journey to Jaburo was the first one I can remember being released in the United States for the PlayStation 2. And then I think it was quickly followed by Zeonic Front, and then Federation versus Eon, Encounters in Space, and then finally, I believe the last game for them for a long time had been Gundam versus Zeta Gundam. And then they, when Seed came out, they did that Gundam Seed game. And I can't remember the title. I want to say it's Zaf something or other. But it wasn't that good. And I've actually played that one, and I nearly bought it, but I tried a demo of it, and my God, I couldn't sit through the first stage. It was just, it felt too different from what I was used to from the Gundam games. And then I know there are, for the current generations, there are a couple of Gundam games. There's Operation Troy, which was supposed to come out in the United States and Europe, but for some reason or another it didn't. And that was actually kind of along the lines of a Battlefield style game with Gundam. So you'd have your mobile suits, your gun tanks, your GMs, and your foot soldiers and all that, and you'd fight over things like that, as far as I knew. And it looked interesting. But they've really kind of trickled down the amount of games that are coming out. I know there's quite a few Unicorn games coming out, Gundam Unicorn. And those have a good chance of possibly making it over here because the OVAs are doing moderately well for just being the OVAs and being released in the fashion they are. So hopefully we'll get to see a hell of a lot more. The only real mech games that we see nowadays are Armored Core, and since Armored Core 5's release, it's just gone downhill. Chrome Hounds was alright. I mean, there's okay games, but not very many good Gundam games that have come back over to other markets outside of Japan. Alright, moving on here. Let's see. For everyone, I apologize ahead of time if I mispronounce your username or handle for it. I'm just reading these off and pronouncing them as best I can. No insult intended. But we're going with RK123 here. He's got a couple of questions, and first one is what Let's Play did I enjoy the most? Well, considering I've only done a couple right now, I'd say, well, I'll break that into two for it. By far, my favorite Let's Play was Mega Man Legends, the first Mega Man Legends game. And now, while I really enjoyed playing Federation vs. Eon, the amount of repetition that you get into these games, and especially with Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam, it just sometimes it makes it a little monotonous to try and record and slog through these freaking videos for it. Especially like right now, I'm in the midst of recording the Titans round 1. It's still not done, and it's just, oh my God, some of these missions are over and over again the same damn thing. But with Mega Man Legends, where it's, you know, a linear path and it keeps going and you're experiencing new things, so far that has been my favorite Let's Play at the moment for it, but always could change. Let's see, RK's second question was my favorite Gundam series and my favorite mobile suit. Favorite Gundam series. It'd probably be a combination between the 8th MS team and parts of Stardust Memories. And I say parts of Stardust Memories, that series is notorious for having really some the worst plot holes and just story faux pas in some of the Gundam universes. And the reason for that is that the director and the story changed so often between the OVA episodes. It just, sometimes you see the ideas that they're going with, and it starts off in one direction. Next episode, just a new direction entirely for it. So that would probably be some of the things. But I love the visual style for it. I love the space combat and the mobile suits. I love Gundam Physalis, I loved the Full Vernian, and then Deborah Stamen and all those. I love all the mobile suit designs from Stardust Memories. In terms of grunt mobile suits and just actually seeing the one you wore from the average soldier's perspective, the 8th MS team was by far the best for that. My favorite battle still is to actually see what it was like to actually see an ace pilot with the Zeon pilot Norris and his Goof Custom just totally lambaste an entire team of ground Gundams and GMs and gun cannons at the time, just how much of a skill difference could make on the battlefield. So that was by far some of my favorite stuff there. I just love the real world grittiness of it. And it also suffered from its own variety of plot holes and devices of that sort of nature. And I'm not a big fan of Aina. She kind of annoyed me a little bit, that character. But I thought it was probably one of the happier endings, too, to a Gundam series, especially set in the Universal Century timeline. I mean, most of the time, Tomino didn't get the name Kill 'Em All Tomino for no reason. So it's interesting to actually see the ending for the 8th MS team and how upbeat it actually was. Let's see here. Favorite mobile suit would be, that's going to be probably a tough pick. Oh, God. If I had to pick one on the fly for it, I'd say it'd have to be the Zeta Gundam and its variations of that. Now, not necessarily the ones in the series, but Sentinel Gundam, and I'm just going to keep this with the with what has actually become animated. So Zeta Gundam for animated, but I absolutely love the S Gundam from Gundam Sentinel. Absolutely love that design. It was a beast design, and that takes place in between parts of Zeta and Double Zeta, from what I understand. I've only read portions of that, and I really want to continue reading it. But I love the designs for the S Gundam and the EX S Gundam. Not to mention the Hummingbird variation for which is, I believe, a variant model of the Zeta Gundam. That's a very interesting mobile suit as well for it. But those are probably my favorites, both animated and just fictional. But that keeps up, and yeah, I'm getting a little better with Doms and the Rick Diaz and anything that hovers like that. They're a decent mobile suit. But by far, the main Gundams are some of the better designs. But there are some generic mobile suits that I do like their design. The Dom Trophin is one of my favorite grunt mobile suit designs. I just love that thing. All right, moving on here. Do I hate the gem in general, or just hate it in Mobile Suit Gundam Federation vs. Zeon / Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam? And actually, this is a question posted by Fave Game Player, and RK actually responded to that, and in his opinion, it's just the Gem 1 that I hate, and he's got it on the he's got a good point there. I do hate the original RGM 79, the Space Gem. It stems along the lines of playing with it for Earth Federation or Federation vs. Zeon. I hated using that mobile suit, and I felt the Federation was gimped in the playthrough for that in space, because they would give you these things. The weapon wasn't that good. The armor was never that fantastic for it, and to me it also had like a really goofy design. Not to mention the way it walked. It's probably the only mobile suit that actually walks and makes that really weird noise with its feet as it walks. Every other mobile suit sounds kind of threatening, but not the Gem 1. I do like the ground gem. I like the design for that, although it seems to be a little bit obese in the design for it. Now, it may just be the way the artist drew it, but for most of the still frames I've seen, they look a little too short or stubbed. I do like the Gem 2 a little bit better, but that's in terms of gameplay. It just seemed like it did a lot better for it. I mean, that mission with cats where I literally lost the head unit, I lost one arm, and that thing still kept on kicking. Now, granted, that was because of the recovery bar and the abuse of that, but that made it endear itself to me in a much, much better way than the original Gem. But in terms of the Gem variants for it, I love the Command Gem. Gem Sniper is pretty cool. Never really had a chance to play some of those. I think the only time some of the variants actually appear would be in Encounters in Space, where the Gem Custom actually appears in the Gem Cannon. And then I believe the Gem Sniper / Command shows up in Journey to Jaburo in the multiplayer VS mission mode once you unlock it there. So those are pretty good, but by far the Gem Custom from Stardust Memories, I absolutely love that one. That was a cool looking mobile suit. They fixed some of the goofy helm designs, and it just looked awfully better than its predecessors had. And yes, I will continue to hate on the Gem 1 as much as I can. Can't stand the damn thing. All right, moving on. Let's see here. Daniel Woldridge asks, what do you think is the most ridiculous Gundam mobile suit? And I have a perfect answer for this. I'm going to split this twice again in between the real robot version of Gundam and the Gundam series and the more super robot version of it. And that comes down to the entire Gundam series and then versus G Gundam. In terms of ridiculousness, G Gundam has the over-the-top, almost every mobile suit in that series is just, what were the designers thinking for it? Now, the one from G Gundam that is by far my least favorite and goofy-looking design of all time would be the GF13-066 NO, otherwise known as the Nether Gundam, from I think it's Neo Holland. it literally looks like a windmill. It's a walking windmill. So imagine a windmill just sprouts two mobile suit legs and two arms, and the top of it reveals a head with a giant windmill on its chest. What possible purpose could you find in designing these? I mean, it's a theme mobile suit is all it is for it. All I expect to see is that it has a counterpart mobile suit called the Gundam Don Quixote. And then I would have been cool with it, but that is by far the most ridiculous one out of the entire thing. But that's for G Gundam. Now, if I had to go into the most ridiculous mobile suit for the real robot side of Gundam, then that definitely has to go down to a couple of them. And one is the Sazabi, which it was very interesting, very Zeon mobile suit. I did like it, but I like the Hummingbird variation from some of the novelizations a little bit better for it. But some of you could definitely tell it had Zong features to it and some other things. But the Akai variations are definitely some of the ones that are really goofy looking. And I know the Akai has endeared itself to fans all over, but to me the design just looks a little goofy for it. And in terms of just the Gundam mobile suits for it, the weirdest design to me has to be the Gundam Physalis in terms of just proportions for the body. And I know, given that the actual purpose for that mobile suit was to launch a nuclear weapon at close range and be able to survive the blast, but it seems like they just made the whole thing very large in proportion, and it looked kind of weird, especially considering that it shouldn't have been able to walk in atmosphere with the proportions that it actually had for it, not let alone lift that friggin' shield. So that's just some of those little gripes. For their aesthetics, it's still a cool mobile suit. So are the others, like the Act Guy. But Daniel also asked, what ideas would I have for a new Gundam series, and what would my perfect plot be? God, I would like to see some variations that leave behind the new type stigma for it. I don't want to see Jesus Yamato beating the hell out of somebody again. I don't want to see a lot of new types for it. While I know new types are the LOL plot hole of the UC universe for Gundam, the horse is long since dead, and it's just pulp now that Tomino's just beaten it so much. I'd like to see a return to grunts, like the average Joe mobile suit pilot kind of thing in a war, and see one that maybe doesn't always end up, as some other people put it, that Earth, even though it may be bad, always ends up winning in space. The space noids fighting for freedom always get beaten down into the ground kind of thing. I would like to see a twist on that, perhaps, to actually see somebody from space actually win a war kind of thing. I know Gundam Age has tried to put in some variation with a lot of sci-fi elements, and what they at first appeared to be doing was like space alien type of thing, which is interesting, but way out there in science fiction. I know we're talking about walking mobile suits here, but the aliens just doesn't seem to fit too well. I expect those more out of an Armored Core game than I would actually out of Gundam for it, so it kind of seemed out of place for that. I would love to see some variation in the mobile suit design that doesn't rely upon funnels, bits, new type computer systems along those lines, or gigantic beam cannons. All those ideas have been done to death, and that would be nice to see something a little different than that. Even a return to a simplistic design, something that's streamlined, like Gundam Mudrock or the original Gundam, for example. That would be a preferred little departure from our current designs for it. I wouldn't mind seeing some more variation done in the UC universe, because for some reason, anything that's an alternate timeline, which is what I refer to, anything that is not the Universal's entry timeline, which is the original timeline, they just kind of get a little bit too weird sometimes for me to really, get behind them like I do for the Universal's entry, and they're nowhere near as dark. The dark plots are something that I really liked out of the Gundam series, but the good ones aren't too bad in their own right for it. So that's kind of some of the things I'd like to see. I don't have a fan script here that I can just whip out and start listing the ideas that I want to see in a series. I just noticed some details here I wouldn't mind seeing changed or done in a slightly different manner for it, but hopefully that answers your question there, Daniel. Moving on down the list here, we have Exia 124578. This question is, since the Gundam franchise recently hit 30 years, do you think that instead of making a new show, that they should just remaster the original Mobile Suit Gundam, Zeta Gundam, and then Double Zeta Gundam, and release it like their new Gundam shows, one every year or so? This should give them enough time to come up with a good new Gundam show. Well, they've kind of already been doing that to a degree. I'm not sure how many people have, at the time, watched Seed for the first time and had seen the original Gundam, but some of the first couple episodes of Seed literally follow the original Mobile Suit Gundam verbatim in just what they do and how some of the plot points for it. Now, different mobile suits, different characters, but it almost got to the point where I could predict the next episode for some of these things for it. And then when you got to Gundam Seed Destiny, it was a lot darker of a tone for it, but it also seemed to bring along a lot of the spirit that they tried to capture from Zeta Gundam and failed miserably, in my opinion, for it. And Gundam 00, it just absolutely copied some of the Gundam Wings, Little Fervor, for a bunch of mobile suits working in tangent as a team. It seems like they've tried to recapture the spark that some of these original series had during their original run, but I don't think that it's really come up with much. Now, I suppose Unicorn did come out of there, and it is something original. It does continue on with a lot of things, but I don't think they should just send out a rehash for things. Now, if they're going to go back to, as you said, remaster the series, and I think that maybe Gundam Origin, which is a retelling of the original Gundam series with some of the novelizations ideas instead of what the original series were like. I don't know what that'll turn out like yet. Nobody's seen anything for it. So I'm going to kind of hold my breath. I think that some of these were just, they captured some very good elements at the first run they had for it, and copying it to the point is just going to bastardize everything that they built upon so far. So I'd like to see some new ideas out there, because I feel like if they just keep beating those three staple series to death, and I'm use the term staple series for Zeta Gundam very loosely, and we'll get to that question up along the list here. It takes a lot of what was fun for Gundam and just leaves it kind of bland, because I see what's going to happen for it. All right, now the next question I don't actually have the author for listed here. For some reason on my list it's cut off. But it says, hey there, Loken R. I've been watching Mobile Suit Gundam Age, and I'm a little confused on when it's taking place. Could you please tell me if you know? Now, as I said earlier, anything that's not outside of, or not in part of the Universal Century timeline, I refer to as an alternate timeline, and that's what they actually started off as. Those actually count kind of within the same universe, I suppose, if you want to follow Turna Gundam's logic for it. But to answer your question directly, Mobile Suit Gundam Age actually takes place during a timeline known as the Advanced Generation, which is a different type of calendar system than like the UC calendar system or After Colony system for it, or even for Mobile Suit Gundam 00, which is Anno Domini timeline for it. And now, from what I understand, the series, Age series, takes place set hundreds of years after the end of a space colonization race, and all wars have basically kind of dried up on Earth, and peace started to reign pretty well before the attack of UE. So it kind of counts as its own little separate timeline. But thanks to Turna Gundam and what it set in precedence there, it is all possibility that it could be just one big chunk of the timeline from the original UC. It's just way in the future or way in the past, something like that. And for those people who might be confused as what I'm talking about, I encourage you to watch Turna Gundam. It's an interesting series for it, but the ramifications of some of the later plot points, especially the ending for it, definitely could be used to string a lot of the timelines together, even though they have no physical relation to one another outside of whatever they appear within. So hopefully that answers your question for that. Moving up here, let's see, we got user 148-52577. I've got, see, he's got 2 questions here. Why do I hate Gundam 00? And he says if it's because of Season 2, then I get it. But if not, then why? Just to answer that off the bat, I do hate it because of the 2nd season, but more so for the movie, was it Awakening of the Trailblazer? To me, that was like the precursor to what they were trying to think about doing at first with Gundam Age, and I just didn't want to see that type of thing in there. That wasn't an idea I felt was done very well. Could it be done very well? Yes, in all likelihood it could, but just not in that portion for it. But the 2nd season definitely contributes to my hatred for it. The 1st season, it was tolerable. It wasn't bad. It was a very interesting take, and especially considering that it was set in such a real life setting to what our actual history is, and what the current political and national events that are going on across the globe. It was a very interesting little thing, and there are a couple of scenes that I really did like out of 00, especially Season 1, that definitely endeared it a bit. But after Season 2 or so, I just got really disenfranchised with it, and then Awakening of the Trailblazer, just, if that's the correct movie title, I can't remember off the top of my head if it is or not. It just really, I didn't like it after that point and couldn't really sit through it again. Now, his second question is, of all the Gundam games you've played, what do you think were the best? I've basically played 3 Gundam games for the Super Nintendo, none for the PlayStation, 4 or 5, I think, for the PlayStation 2, and absolutely none for any console generation after that. So I'm going to have to stick with the PlayStation 2 era, and I'd say it would be Encounters in Space. I really liked how they did the combat for that in space. It was the proper way to do it, even though portions of that game were on like a rail shooter type of thing where you really couldn't move too much. I felt that it was a faster paced game, and it kept up with a lot of what you see in space combat that Gundam does. So that's by far my favorite Gundam game so far. Now there could be another one that comes out, and I hope they do, and I hope I get to say that, well, it's a contest now between this new game and some of the old ones, but so far not really. All right, Smack Mickey, you got some interesting questions here, don't you? His first question is OP original poster. There's somebody here from either Reddit or 4chan. Do you enjoy chocolate pudding? On occasion. Chocolate pudding's not too bad. Not a big fan of sweets though. His second question is, why isn't Mega Man a Gundam? Because Dr. Light is an asshole, that's why. And he says, I prefer cheesecake, do you? Again, I referred to the chocolate pudding question. It's alright, but I'm not a big fan of sweets. So, more for you, Smack Mickey. And let's see here. Next question. Vegeta Super Saiyan AQW writes 4 different questions here. First one is, what are your PC specs? You know what? They're there. I've got an Intel i7 core processor, about 8 gigs of RAM, and 2 terabytes now of actual storage in terms of HDD. Got a GeForce 570, which is a fairly decent card. And I can't remember off the top of my head what my power supply is for some strange reason. And I use a full tower steel type case. It's not too bad. I enjoy it. Cost me a pretty penny about a year ago, but it's getting cheaper every day. His second question is, can I have your Skype/MSN? And my answer is, I don't have a Skype and I don't have an MSN. And what I do have in terms of communications and stuff like that, I like to keep private. That's no insult to anybody, or I don't want anybody to get offended for it. But if I'm going to release that type of information, I'll do it my own free will and time. But at this point, nah, that's best to just keep that all private. His third question, do you live alone? It's a little bit of a direct question for things along those, privacy lines. We're going to go with sure. His fourth question is, do I ever plan on going to Greece? I don't know if I'm going to ever end up going to Greece. I wouldn't mind visiting. However, with the way that Europe is going right now, and parts of the Balkans and then Greece itself, what with the economic turmoils over there, I don't think it would be the greatest idea to go over to that point of the world at this exact moment. Well, I never rule it out. Let's see. Yeah, it could possibly happen. Wouldn't mind going to Greece. And let's see here. Smack Mickey put up a second question. I don't know why he didn't put it into his original, but we'll list it anyways. He says that I'd love to see you do an LP of Legends of the Dragoon to take it towards that serious route. I'd love to do an LP of Legends of Dragoon and a lot of things in general. But with the way how much I work and time constraints therein, it's a little difficult to actually do a couple of things along the LP line, and it's taken me a long time to get through some of these games. So I take suggestions, and I am open to any suggestion for an LP. But I can't always do those LPs, whether it's just because I can't get them to run correctly in some fashion, I don't own the game, or can't find a decent way to get a copy of it, that kind of thing. That definitely limits what I can actually do in terms of Let's Plays. Not to mention that some of these are taking a hell of a lot longer than I originally anticipated for them. Now, I'm not quite sure if he originally meant that question to me or if he meant it to Vegeta Super Saiyan AQW there. So either way, I answered it, and then we'll be done with that. Our final question comes from RK123 again, and his question is my music picks. Now, I think you're wanting to look into my personal preferences for music, or along the lines of that, instead of like my favorite Gundam music or anime music or game music in general. You know what? For my personal picks of genres, I'm pretty well open to everything. Dubstep's not too bad. Classic rock's okay. Let's see here. What else is pretty good? Some rap, not much. I don't really listen to rap all that often. Some of the older stuff, Dr. Dre, that kind of thing. Some of Snoop's not older stuff was pretty good, or whatever he's calling himself now. I think he changed his name. Now, one genre I cannot stand, and I'm not entirely certain why, considering where I grew up, is country. I do not like country music in the least. Most of it just kind of sounds like nails on a chalkboard, and I know that's going to piss some people off, but there it is. I'm not a big fan of that country music stuff there. Techno's pretty good. Don't have a whole lot of that. I mean, you got some classic stuff like Daft Punk, Deus, that kind of thing. I also listen to a lot of original soundtracks, OSTs and things, some of the soundtracks from games and anime. The Final Fantasy series is a very good series of compositions there, thanks to Umetsu's masterful handling of the entire thing. And there are a couple other games. Legend of Zelda. I love the original soundtracks for The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time. Still by far one of my favorites. It has to be the original Temple of Time music. That was just so epic when you first walk in there to put all three pieces of the trial on the pedestal there. That music just made the whole scene so much more epic and memorable to that regard for it. And that actually ends most of the questions I've got here. I'm trying to think of anything off the top of my head that I want to mention at the end of this whole thing. I plan on continuing along the lines of recording these Let's Plays. Like I said before, I'm still in the midst of recording Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam, and I probably will be for many, many more moons, essentially. Especially since I haven't even gotten to the Access Xeon side yet, which afterwards would open up round 2 for, well, a lot of people. So if you hope to God I never go back to Federation / AUG or Titans, you're unfortunately in for a pretty bad surprise there. We get to go back, but we do get to go through quite a few variations, which will probably liven things up a little bit better, and then they tend to go a little bit faster. In regards to my next LP, I actually haven't decided on what I'm going to do as of this moment right now. I had wanted to do a couple of games that I picked up recently, but for some strange reason, I can't get either the recording to work out the way I want it to, or the software to actually work correctly in terms of just playing. A lot of textures are popping up wrong and things. It's kind of weird looking at a character and their back is missing. From the front they look fine, but they have no back textures, so they just kind of see through for it. But who knows for it what games I'll get into for whatever reason. And I'll continue doing Let's Plays for as long as it seems entertaining to me, and that'll be about it. that ends all my questions that I received for this and everything I pretty well wanted to say. So thanks for listening, thanks for submitting questions, and thanks for watching all of my Let's Play videos. Lots more to come.